Thank you, Emily. Well, thanks all for being here. It's fun to see some new faces, as well as some old ones, quote unquote. I'll use air quotes for that we haven't seen in a while. Good to see you. So I'm Jazmin, class of 2002, Hamiltonian. Yeah. And after Hamilton, in short order, I became a mom and then eventually an educator. I teach Spanish and I work with toddlers, 18-month-olds all the way to 6th grade. And my latest adventure is starting a Montessori Model UN program in the upper elementary at our Montessori school, which has been super fun. Let's see. I live in Richmond, Virginia. I have 2 kids. My eldest is a boy. He's 13 now and in 7th grade in middle school. And my daughter is 10, a 4th year. She probably thinks she's 30. Acts like that sometimes. And I thought we could spend some time together. Carrie was so kind when Emily asked us if we could do this. She was so kind and coming right on board. So I thought immediately I needed like an educator, a seasoned educator, and Carrie's been one for many years, to join us. And we thought that our goal for tonight would just be to hear from each other in wholesome space and learn from each other. Some of us are even in different time zones. We're all living in different places. What it's like to be in this unique historic moment that we're in, and do so in sort of like a very relaxed format, and maybe by the end have some mutual resources that we can share. Of course, Carrie and I, being the true Hamiltonian students that we are, started that work already, so we'll share that with you at the end as well. But if it comes up throughout, we can always use the chat, and you can type in, you can mute yourself so we don't hear your keyboard, and you can type in a resource that pops into your head, and we can maybe compile them all at the end if that feels like that, if you feel so moved to do so. I think that might be helpful. And so Carrie and I, being the educators that we are, we tend to think in planning out a class in that sort of format, and we feel comfortable getting to know people by asking a question that we ask everybody to answer. So we ask that for this exercise you bear with us, even if you think it's might not understand it. I promise you it'll make sense by the end. And that is to share with us one star and one wish, or it's also known as one rose and one thorn. So this is an imagery kind of in your head, just give you a little bit of an idea. Maybe your kids have done something similar before. So a star or rose being something from your day or the last recent few days. It's only Tuesday this week, that went well, or that made you happy, that you thought was great. And then your thorn or your wish, something that you wish maybe could have gone a little better, or that you're hopeful will be better in the future. So I thought we would start with that sort of exercise, and we do it teacher style because everybody's, boxes, we're all the Brady Bunch here, but everybody's boxes are in different orders. But I want to make sure that we all get a chance to speak and that I remember who said what. So I'll call on everybody, and to give everybody some time to think, I'll go first, Carrie's going to go second, and Emily, you're on deck. So I already gave my name, my connection to Hamilton, where I'm living, and how I'm a parent. So now I will share with you my star, my recent star, or from today or the last few days. And in typical Jazzy fashion, I have thought of several, and now I'm drawing a blank. But I will tell you this, that a couple days ago, this is almost like a mom win, so to speak. I guess it was on Friday. I was in my office writing a paper, a philosophy paper of all things, and I overhear my son singing an impromptu song, and it cracked me up. And so I had to stop what I was doing and go in and see what was happening, and I asked them to recreate it so I could videotape it. And he had sung this song to his sister, saying, it was like, "Get out of my room, don't touch my stuff, I love you, but please leave." It was a really cute song that, for one, got everybody what we needed, right? Nobody got in trouble, nobody got angry. Bella dropped whatever it was she was touching, and she left. Had to come back in to recreate it, but she left. And I thought it was also hysterical because here is an example of my son being the kind of parent I wish I could be on a daily basis. Use humor, be kind, yet firm, and get the results we want. And it was a teaching moment from me, from him, which was nice. So that was definitely a star. On the other hand, a wish for me, or a thorn, is definitely technology. I married a computer science major, so I have a lot of it in the house, which is nice, and it does eventually work. But it's really frustrating when it doesn't, and I can't even, you all told me the other day that we have the internet capacity and pay for the internet capacity that Fortune 500 companies have, yet I can be on a Zoom meeting and it'll just drop for no reason. So that's frustrating to me. But so for today, I have a backup, right? I guess I can't show it to you. But I have a backup right next to me, so hopefully it'll work out just fine today and I won't need it, but he set that up for me, if we do. So, Carrie, any goals for today?
Yeah. I am Carrie Patch Knudsen. I'm also the class of 2002 at Hamilton. I'm a teacher, a classroom teacher, and a literacy specialist, and I've worked in private and public settings for the last 15 years. I was really excited when Jazz asked me to be involved in this because as a mother and an educator, I'm finding this time not only unique and unusual in everything we're doing, but I think it's really important as a reflective practitioner. I'm trained as a progressive educator, and I think it's really important that we reflect on what we're doing and are intentional about it. And so part of the exercise in doing the wish, hope, rosebud, thorn, and I've done it with students of all different ages, is being able to name the feelings and identify them, both negative and positive. And it's an exercise we do with my two children. I have a 10-year-old boy who'll be 11 this summer, and a 7-year-old girl who's turning 8 this month, and we'll have to see what that looks like. And we do it at dinner time, and part of the reason we do it is because I did not grow up in the most emotionally descriptive of households. And as an educator, I've really learned the importance of being able to name and identify feelings, and then identify them and let them go. So we try to do it around the dinner table. We do rosebud, thorn, elephant. The rose being something beautiful and positive that happened to you that day. The thorn being something prickly and not so great. The bud being something you're wishing and hoping for. And the elephant being something shocking, because what's an elephant doing in a rose garden? And you can see that's a really good exercise for little kids. But it can be adapted for all ages in us just being able to identify the feeling, name it, and let it go. So my wish for today, or sorry, my positive, my rose, is that it was sunny. I live in outside of Albany, New York. We live in Columbia County. And it's been very rainy here, very rainy, cold, wet spring so far. And we have a large house, but every day we can get outside, we do. And so I was able to go for a run today, and we played bocce ball as a family. And so those were my stars in being able to get some vitamin D. And then my wish, my thorn, the thing that's really prickly for me in this moment, is trying not to micromanage my co-parent, my husband, David. We're both educators. We're both type A personalities. I was a theater major and a stage manager. Once a stage manager, always a stage manager. And so, I think that's always part of a co-parenting relationship is letting that person be in their own space and manage their own emotions and feelings and activities. But when we're all in such close proximity, it's been really hard for me to not try to make my home my classroom.
Thank you, Carrie. Emily, you're on deck.
Yeah, my name's Emily DeBerry. I work with affinity and identity programs at Hamilton for alumni. I have a 3 and 6-year-old son, and they're wilds. But I think, when this first all went down, my goal, I always said, I want him to keep the knowledge he has the last day he left school and not lose it. So basically my baseline was for him to not get any dumber than he left school. So I think that by roses, I feel like we've done that. He's been, especially the last few days, he's been doing his assignments. And so I've felt pretty good about the classwork, which is great. I think where I have difficulties, my thorn is being home and trying to work and having a 3 and 6-year-old understand that you're not with them, you're working, but you're physically there. I find that extremely hard. And maybe it's the age my children are, but it's extremely hard to explain to them that you can't be present for them even though you're present. So that's been a real challenge for me, I would say.
For sure. Thanks, Emily. Next on my Brady Bunch box, I have Stacy. Oh, you.
Oh,
Okay.
I got it. Sorry. As much as I've been using Zoom the past couple of weeks, I'm still getting used to it. And I apologize if you hear wild screaming. I swear, we feed them. So I am Stacy. I class of 2002, and I was a government major, and I'm now an attorney working for state government, living in Albany. And I have 2 children, a 6-year-old boy turning 7 next month, and a 4-year-old boy. So I find myself in the temporary role of an educator lately, and that has been really eye-opening in a lot of ways, but also frustrating and hard because I also have to, do the parenting and then do my job and just all the house stuff and everything. But my positive from today is we actually hiked our first mountain today. We had started hiking just when this all happened. We hadn't really been real outdoorsy people. We live in the city. We don't even have a yard. But I said, well, we need to get out of the house because my husband works from home. He already worked from home. And so he's on the phone sometimes 4, 5, 6 hours a day. And there's only so much fighting and screaming you can have, even in the middle of a pandemic, on a client call. So we got out of the house and did some hiking, and the kids got really into it. So I said today we were going to climb a mountain. So we went to, a small peak and got all the way to the top, and it was really exciting. So I'm very proud of them and their resilience. And then we came home and I took a long nap because it wiped me out. But apparently the kids are still running crazy. So that was a good thing. My negative is that my younger son, he's 4 years old, and he has a lot of anxiety and ADHD just on a regular day. So this entire process has been, in some ways, the best thing that ever happened to him because he gets everyone under his domain and he gets to control us and be on my lap 12 hours a day, and he loves it and never wants to go back to school again. But in some ways it's been very dysregulating, and he is just very anxious, and that affects all of us. So that is something that we're also dealing with. What was the third thing? The elephant.
Oh, you don't need to.
Oh, yes, yes.
Your thing. Okay. All right. So those are just my two. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Stacy. Let's hear from Sharon next.
Unmute. I'll stand up. So I guess my thorn and my joy today was the class of 1960. So we had a Zoom meeting with them, and they had, of course, they got on half an hour early just to make sure they could Zoom. And then they were on for almost 2 hours. They had so much fun. And there were alumni on there who hadn't seen each other in 60 years, literally. I mean, just really amazing and touching. And now they want to do a weekly Zoom call, which I don't think I can handle. I had to designate somebody else for that. So they're a little bit of my joy and my sorrow, was the class of 1960. But I do want to say, though, the sun is shining. We're in central New York. It's such a rare occasion to have sunshine in Clinton. And Emily and I think, broke every law in the book, and we went for a walk in Root Glen with her children. We did not hug, but and that was actually really wonderful. And I keep saying, oh, I'm zoomed out, but seeing your faces, it's all worth it. So thank you.
And we asked for the best part of his day, my 3-year-old, and he said, walking with Sharon.
Oh,
I love that. We got out on bikes today, and my husband and I kind of looked at each other and thought, okay, when it's time to start phasing back in, maybe biking with friends can be the first thing we do, because it'll help control space a little bit. I don't know. We'll see. Anyways, thanks, Sharon. And I won't tell. So next on my list, I have Alexandra. If you want to unmute yourself.
I'm trying. Okay, there you go.
There you go.
Alexander Stevens, class of 95. I was a comparative literature major at Hamilton. Then I went to law school and practiced law for 10 years. And for the last 10 years, I've been a teacher at Greenwich High School in Greenwich, Connecticut. And I would say my daily rose is that I make sure that I get out for a walk every day for an hour. So today it was absolutely glorious, and I wish it was like this every day, but if it's raining, I go out too, because I just have to get out of the house. And I either use the time while I'm walking, to catch up with my mom or my cousin, or walk with a friend or a neighbor, like 6 feet apart. But it's funny, I actually have spend more time with friends now than I did before, because at least once or twice a week I'm walking with someone in the neighborhood. So that's really nice. My thorn, this whole situation. Having 3 kids, 2 educators in the house. One of the kids I have 2 teens, so they're pretty good on their own. I don't have to be on them about school or anything like that. I do have to be on them because they would literally spend 24/7 online if I let them. So we have a lot of fights and arguments about that. But the biggest challenge is my 5-year-old who's not reading. So while I'm doing all my work stuff, I've got to be, going through all her lessons with her. And there's a reason I'm a high school teacher and not an elementary school teacher. And it's, as you guys all know, it's a million times harder when it's your own kid. and she's a very stubborn kid. I don't think if this had happened when my boys were her age, would be really no issue. But she's much harder to handle. So I can't wait till we're through all this.
I hear ya. Thank you, Alexandra. You've got the spectrum in your house. And Rachel, you're next.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rachel. So I graduated from Hamilton in 2001. I was a physics major, and now I'm a physics teacher. So I guess we have a lot of teachers on this call. And I currently live in Madison, Wisconsin, and I teach at a small liberal arts college. And my husband, who also went to Hamilton, is also a physics teacher there. So it sounds like we're in a similar situation to some of you. So I have an 11-year-old who's in 5th grade, and he's been really great about the online schooling. In Madison, they took it pretty slow, so they didn't try and do any school for like the first 3 weeks, and then he was just kind of, you know, on his own to figure out what to do. But luckily, he really likes to read, and he really likes Legos and PBS, and that's just sort of it on repeat. And so now that school has been going for a couple weeks, he's pretty good about doing his assignments, and so that's really been great. I can't imagine what it would be like with younger kids that are more in need of attention. But I think Carrie said, like, it's hard not to micromanage. So like sometimes looking at the lessons that he has to do, like I want to rewrite them, but like you just kind of have to let them do what the teacher assigns. I think that the good thing that's happened in the last couple of days, so the first weekend when we found out that school was closed, Ben and I actually built a hoop house in the backyard and planted some seeds, and now we're like 5 or 6 weeks later and we're starting to harvest our greens from there. So that's really exciting, that, you know, we're getting stuff from our garden. So if the global food supply shuts down, we'll at least have, you know, radishes and lettuce and spinach and stuff. Yeah. The thing that is the thorn, I guess, for me is just feeling like teaching online is not as good as doing it in the classroom. And I think that goes both for seeing what my son is doing and also like my relationships with my own students. I feel like a lot of them are deteriorating, and that as the semester goes on, you know, every week there's like one more student that hasn't submitted assignments. So we only have a couple more weeks left in the semester. And so I feel like it's very much a just put your head down and we'll get through it kind of thing, and not like we're really trying to do good online pedagogy because we just didn't really have the time to do that or the capacity, you know, to do that very well. So that's been frustrating. But I'm hoping that in a couple of weeks when school is over, then the summer will be a chance that we can kind of hopefully reset before the fall, which hopefully won't be online.
Yeah, I hear you. Thank you, Rachel. It was interesting hearing from everybody. And like you said, Rachel, it's also found it very interesting that we all have education in common, but it's sort of, we're a place of education in common. It's sort of fitting, though, that this is a Hamilton event. When Carrie and I were talking about this earlier, I was reflecting on the Hamilton College motto, which is Know Thyself, and how meaningful that motto has been to me lately and how it keeps coming back. I'm sort of reflective in nature. I don't write journals, but I will reflect out loud with close friends all the time. I'm very grateful that they're patient enough to do that with me. And I find that at first, you know, all these memes and these things that you hear, people saying, oh, we're all stuck at home, so now we have time to reflect and to think how we do things. And at first I was so upset by that because I never found myself more busy than right now. I have more than 1,000 square feet per human in my house, and the house has never felt so small. So that was kind of a non sequitur for me, but I realized that you can't help but, as you're trying to just manage through things, you're constantly thinking about things and you're constantly self-reflecting. And I'm realizing that I am learning more about myself and the other humans in my household and how I approach life in general and all these other things in these tiny little snippets of time in between me having an awesome Rose moment where I'm like rocking it as mom or wife, and me totally flipping my lid and my husband coming up to remind me that he's on an international phone call and I really can't be screaming at the top of my lungs with the children. So that I find is interesting. But I like that, and you know, I know that Sharon and Emily technically you guys aren't teachers, but you work for Hamilton and you interact with Hamiltonians, which means you are a teacher. I've said that a lot about Sharon before, and all of my C&D people. I think I learned as a kid, or as a student at Hamilton, I think I learned just as much, if not more, from my experiences with my C&D people than I did from my actual professors on campus, who I think all of us can attest to. We have found at least a handful whom we love, and we probably are even still in contact with if they're lucky enough to still have them with us. So, Carrie, I don't know if any of those roses or thorns really stuck out to you that you wanted to start talking about or mentioning. Was there one that moved you?
Well, I think it was interesting because I even found when I was sharing mine, I think there's a real reluctance sometimes to name the negative. And I think it was really great. Alexandra, is it? Yes. Where you just said, this whole thing is hard. And I think allowing ourselves to feel that and then allowing our kids to feel that is really valuable. And it doesn't always come because, like Jazmin said, we are so busy and our days are so full. And so I think really taking the time to pause and to say, it's like a pause, right? That's what they're calling it in New York. New York is on pause. And I think that can look different for a lot of different people. And that can bring out highs and lows. And I think just being able to identify both of them is really good. And that connection into the Hamilton, the motto of the know thyself, is if you're able to see both your strengths and your weaknesses, that creates self-awareness. I actually had my 6th graders last week did a slideshow project on mindfulness. We have them research it and then write about it. And I work for a large suburban public school. I have 126 graders that I work with every day. And some of them have the emotional language to talk about self-awareness and some of them don't. And I think even this exercise can sometimes bring out people's comfort level with being reflective. And so I just think it was a testament to all of you that you were able to access that and say that. But I even found when I was doing my negative, I was still trying to do that like humble brag, like that sugar coating of the negative, or to make light of it, as opposed to be honest and be like, yeah, my husband and I got upset today. And it was really hard, because I think there's something with us that we don't always own that negative,
Yeah, for sure. I think also it's interesting that it shouldn't surprise me that the same person's thorn spoke to you or stood out to you in your head, because it did to me as well, Alexandra. One thing, it's so hard, I think maybe because of the type of people we are just naturally, that we strive to do things really well and we're used to doing things well. When we're faced with the unknown and we have no tools to draw from, no past experiences, no sage on the stage to listen to, it's daunting and scary and can get frustrating really fast. But again, that practice of reflecting, and when you're not even thinking about it, maybe it's when you're walking and you're talking with a friend, or I'm in the shower, or right after I feel like my husband said something really insensitive, I realize, we are in uncharted waters here. This is brand new in history, never before. Yes, we've had pandemics. Joaquin pointed out to me that we've had pandemics, major ones, about every 100 years. He pointed that out to me the other day. But never have we had one in which we are all back into our homes, but life goes on. Right? We're still working at home, and those worlds haven't necessarily melded that way before. We are still very interconnected online, on websites, the news media, high school is just as fresh and in our faces as it was before, if not more now. And now we're still expecting the same from ourselves and from the other people in our houses. And we haven't ever had that time to like stop first and then regroup in many cases. Some cases maybe you have. And then I think about these other times, you know, my son, I brought him up because he's the one who said it and made me think about the differences between this and some other hardships. And I think about World War II and how long that took and what we were asking of humans to do during that time. I'm able to get food. So things are only but so bad. The fact that we're using this technology to try to keep our children in school is asking an awful lot of the kids and of us as parents, frankly, because not every parent is an educator. You know, Alexandra, you're a high school teacher. You're not a kindergarten teacher or a first grade teacher. You're not a reading specialist. Yet, you know, you're an educator, so you figure, and you're intelligent, so you figure, well, we practice, I should be able to figure this out. But I think sometimes maybe we don't give ourselves enough credit, and maybe we should also realize that during times of war, like in World War II or during the Holocaust, survivors of that, kids who went through that, they were fine in the end, right? It's not like we had a generation of idiots come out of that. We didn't. They were fine in the end. So I try to educationally, yeah. So I try to remind myself of that when I'm really frustrated with my middle schooler who, for the first 3 weeks of his homeschooling experience, acted fine, like things were going fine. He was going to Zoom. I thought it was the same as always. Turns out he hadn't turned in one assignment. So he went from being at the top of his class straight A's to having a 0 average in the last trimester. And his goal for the year was to, you know, get those high honors and have his name called at the end of the year, and he just blew it all away in the first 2 weeks. And I was so upset. I'm still a little upset, let's be honest. But then I realized, you know, we all show how we're dealing with this in different ways. And Joaquin maybe looks like he had it under control, but, you know, he had some regression, and we're working through it now. And on the other hand, his school is acting like they need to be just as rigorous as they were in person. And frankly, I have arguments with the teachers all the time. I think they're asking too much of a middle school student. You can't expect them. Look what we're all going through. This is all new. We're all sharing bandwidth. We have families with one computer that are all sharing that one computer for work and homework. And what about the families, and we do have them at Joaquin School, whose parents are essential workers, and they're working like 16-hour shifts at the hospital or whatever. Like, when are they supposed to have time to be a teacher? So I don't know how we balance that, but I would say that what you said about your daughter and that being frustrating that she's not reading, I would urge you, maybe this is the time to do that, to take that reflective time and put things, I hate to say put it in perspective, but to realize that this is hard what we're doing and we're learning different things, and what do we want at the end of this, whenever it is. I think that's almost the hardest part, is not knowing when the end is going to be. But who do we want to be, and what do we want our relationship with our children to look like? Maybe some things just don't matter. I don't know.
Can I interject with that? Just because you said something really resonated for me, but I also just wanted to take a minute to welcome Cam, who just came. Everybody say hi, Cam. I want to give him a chance. I let him know how we introduced ourselves, that we just said who we are, how we're connected to Hamilton, how we parent, where we are geographically. I think I forgot that one, Cam. If you don't mind introducing yourself, that'd be awesome.
Certainly. We're on the West Coast in the SF Bay area, and we have a senior currently, or will be a senior this coming year. He's finishing up his junior year. And Boy, we've got 2 of us home working with phone calls, and we have 2 sons home, both from college with remote classes. And we have an open floor layout, which makes sound traveling through the house really fun. So it's been an adventure.
Well, we're really glad you're here, Cam. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then Jazz, just what you said that really resonated and connected with me, and this ties into what Stacy was saying about your child who has ADHD and anxiety. I have a son who has a lot of anxiety too. And both as a parent, as an educator, we talk a lot about what is more anxiety producing, the known or the unknown. And I think, like you said, this pandemic has a really interesting place in history in that we know more. I can look every day and find out how many cases there are in my county. I can find that up-to-date information and know. I think with the flu pandemic, there wasn't that level of knowledge. And so sometimes I feel like more information, especially for children who don't necessarily have the filters that we have, can be more overwhelming. But I think what's most overwhelming for me is in this situation is the unknown. So I don't know if everyone wants to just kind of chime in and say, like, is there one or the other that's harder for you right now? The influx of information, professor I was speaking to compared it to drinking out of a fire hose, where you just have this constant flood and barrage of information coming at you. Is that harder, or is it harder that you don't know when kids will be going back to school, or what your summer will look like, if you're going to be able to take that vacation? Because I think both, interestingly, have their challenge.
I can say for us, me personally at least, and us, that I agree that there's combinations that the unknown is probably the most stress producing. At the same time, all these facts, without actually understanding the context and relationship to all these numbers, trying to really put them in perspective, and then try and figure out how does this go forward, and what does this mean, and how these numbers continue to go as we get near the end of the semester and into summer, and what will happen come fall. Yeah, there are lots of questions still to come. And the ambiguity is probably the most stress causing.
We had an interesting thing happen in our family this week where we inadvertently forgot to tell my son that school had been extended again until May 15th in New York State. And he's 11, he has anxiety, and he was really like spiraling this weekend and really feeling challenged. And my husband and I were like, what's going on? Like, is it just that it's now setting in? And then he said something to me yesterday about how he can't believe, he's like, well, we're probably not going back to school in 2 days, because if we were, we would know about it. I was like, oh, we didn't tell him that it moved again. And then I had this whole thought process, like, maybe that was okay because he didn't know, or maybe it was harder because he thought he was going back. Have you found, especially those like with younger children, how much information do you give them? Do you feel like more information causes the anxiety? Like Alexander, for your 5-year-old, or Stacey, for your 4-year-old, is it more anxiety producing for them to know or not know, do you think?
I think that, so my son, his major thing is control. He wants to control everything. So he declared like the first or second week that he was never going back to school. So he doesn't really, if we say you're coming, and sometimes we joke like, okay, tomorrow you're going to get on the bus. And he's like, no, you know. The one thing that is difficult is that, you know, his brother's in first grade, so he has to do some schoolwork, whereas I'm not making him do any schoolwork. So the older brother gets upset, and he's like, why do I have to do school and he doesn't? So yeah, I think in some ways, you know, not knowing, because I'd like to say to them, like, okay, guys, just a couple more weeks of this. But who knows what that's even going to look like. In fact, I work for the Department of Health, so I'm a little closer to a lot of the things that are going on. We've been reviewing like different decisions and public health decisions that local municipalities are making. And every time the question of summer camp comes up, like my radar is like, oh, all right, what's the word? What's the word? Summer camp. but they haven't decided yet. And I just think I'm waiting on bated breath. And I don't want to hype it up too much because, you know, they love summer camp, but if they don't get to go, like, I'm just going to be so sad. But I guess I would rather just know at this point because I'm waiting like every day when Andrew Cuomo comes on, and I'm like, tell me, the not knowing.
Yeah, well, in Virginia, there's no summer camp. There might be, we don't know, but a lot of the summer camps closed already or announced that they're not going to have them. So yeah, not to like, and every state's going to be different, you know. Obviously, some states are opening back up, so maybe there's time. I don't know, but I guess one question I would ask is, knowing that some have canceled already, is there harm in already framing your mind around the idea of they're not and preparing for that? I don't know. For me, that would bring me peace, but for other people, like my husband, for example, he'd probably go overboard and then present me with an itinerary of what my summer is going to look like. So I guess maybe he needs to think that summer might still happen. But Cam, I'm so interested to hear what it's like to have a student home doing school again after being effectively out on their own for a while.
Yes, there is a lot of, I'll say, adapting on all sides.
Yeah.
Giving them freedom, well, except that in this case, there's not a lot of freedom. You know, typically when they're coming home, like for summer, they would typically, you know, be able to go out, do whatever they're doing, except that everybody's cooped up here at home a lot more. Which means we're in each other's space a lot more as well. So that's been a bit of a challenge for us.
And I think that's something that Jazz and I talked about being a common theme no matter the age of your kid. That you're sharing space and schedules and food in ways that you're not used to sharing.
Yes.
And that's a big adjustment.
Yeah.
We wanted to know though, are you doing laundry again?
Yes.
Actually, it's the one thing we're not doing. Everybody, luckily, is still doing their own laundry, so I thumbs up on that. But I tend to be the sous chef. My wife's still the main cook. I'm still a sous chef. We're still doing 90% of the meals, and I do most of the cleaning in the kitchen after dinner. So that could be improved.
How's that? We wondered about that too, because at Hamilton we've got, you know, the diner, we've got, you know, the meal plan, and we have these magical house elves that come and clean up after us every weekend. So yeah, we wondered about that, because some college students, like, who live in their own apartment, I can see how, either maybe they stay in their own apartments, but if they would go home, that would be made a major difference, as they're used to being able to do for themselves. But here you guys are, maybe you've gotten used to not having to cook so much or clean after, and now they're back. And they're older, and they should be able to do these things by themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll never forget. I lived with my dad and stepmom, and my first summer coming back between freshman and sophomore year at college at Hamilton, I had the audacity to wash and fold and put away my own clothes. And this is a big thing, there were clothes in the dryer when it was time for me to put my clothes in the dryer. So I took their clothes out of the dryer, folded them, separated them, mom and dad, and put them on their sides of the bed. Now in high school, my laundry would just appear folded and cleaned on my side of the bed. So I thought I was doing something really good and well within, like, this is how we do things, right? My stepmother has never been so angry with me before or after. I couldn't believe, I was so shocked at the fact that she was angry. Here I thought, doing something good. And in the end, she was big, and she came and she apologized and realized, that for her, she wasn't ready for that change, I think. And it's easy to, you've been mom for decades. And so they're back. It's very easy for you to fall back into that mom and dad role. I can imagine, I wonder if what it feels like for the adult students, Hamilton students back home, if it's easy for them to fall back into their teenage selves or not.
A little bit, yes.
I gotta think it's so hard for them.
I apologize. I've got a work thing popping up. The problem with being at home at work. I'll see you all later. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Cam. Good to see you. I'm sorry, Alexandra, what were you saying?
I was just thinking, I mean, that's one of the things I was thinking about, because once I left for Hamilton, that was it. Summer after my freshman year, I got my own apartment in Providence, Rhode Island, because I had a job there. And then my summer after sophomore year, I had an apartment in Saratoga Springs with my college roommate. And I can't even remember where we were junior year, but I basically never, kind of went back into that home situation. And now these poor kids may be in it until January. And and I do think our generation more, I was doing all my own laundry starting in middle school, and and this generation is not so self-sufficient. So I'm sure they're coming back with oh yeah, bathrooms are clean for me. You did that before I left, and someone did that at Hamilton, and so now,
But that's one thing that I think Hamilton really spoiled me in a way, because I think even when I got to law school, I was living in a dorm-like situation, and I was still in school, but everything was so different. And I was like, wait a minute, I have to clean and cook, and what is this? Hamilton, with the unlimited meal plan and everything right there on campus, definitely spoiled me for adult life in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I had to do that stuff before I went to Hamilton. I had the job, I had to cook, I had to do my own laundry. My mom worked, Saturdays were cleaning days. And then I went to Hamilton for 4 years, and, we had a quad, and someone came in and cleaned our bathroom for us. And we went got our meals whenever we felt like it, or ordered, Rocket Rod. It would bring us pizza.
Yeah, no, if I could relive my life knowing that someone would make me an omelet every Saturday and Sunday, I could do so many things differently.
Right.
I think that's too something that we're all feeling is a level of regression. And I think for adults, that looks like I'm still in my pajama pants. And yeah, I have a faculty meeting tomorrow at 10. I may look professional up here, but I'm wearing my Crocs. I got my fuzzy slippers on,
Right.
And so I think as adults, we're feeling that, or the discipline of going out on a walk or exercising or making sure you're maintaining routine. We regress in that. I know a lot of adults who are overeating and baking and eating all these things that they're not used to eating, right? So that's the way in which we regress. And then the kids, has anybody seen in the kids some regression? I've definitely seen
my God, yeah.
a lot, right? Because that's a change and conflict. And then, but then at the same time, we're asking them to step up a little bit too. I've been having the kids put dishes in the dishwasher, and they think I'm crazy. They're like, what are you talking about? You always do this. We always just bring them to the sink, and then they disappear. And I'm like, well, we're all home now. We're all using all the dishes, so now they go in the dishwasher. It's and so it's you want to give them some sense of responsibility and ownership, but you also don't want them to be overburdened either.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's something that we can learn from too, is that this is an opportunity to prepare our children at home while we have them, to help them along the way to self-independence a little bit more, is to maybe think about that a little bit, and maybe see if there's something that they can do to help us out. There's a philosophy of teaching that says that you should never do for the child what the child can do for themselves. Also that, our goal in life as we grow up and come of age. Our goal is to become this adult, right? And what does that adult look like? Well, I argue it's something we're still working on. It's a lifelong process of self-actualization. But maybe this is an opportunity, one of those silver linings for us to think about is exactly that. Like, what can become a new normal for our children? I don't know what that might look like. But we have the same issue with plates. I thought we had so many plates, but now we're eating 3 meals a day at home. So that means we're doing 2 loads of dishes a day. And that's an awful lot when I'm trying to be on Zoom or I'm trying to study or, work with students, and my mother-in-law's working from home and my husband is, work has only gone up for him. Somebody said that, I think, Stacey, you said that your husband is on the phone 4 or 5 hours a day. Mine was on the phone for 12 hours a day, every day but Sunday, for like 4 weeks. It was crazy. And now, now he's learning that he can walk while he talks. So we'll go out for a walk while he's on the phone. So we see a little bit more of him. But anyways, I was just thinking about that, those silver linings, those of us with younger kids, and we hear about what it's like to live with teenagers or young adults coming back home from college. What can we take advantage of now? I should be making my kids, I do make them put away their laundry, but they should do the whole thing. They know how to wash laundry, but they should have to. If they want clean clothes, they should clean them. They're old enough. Let's see if that'll work.
Well, I think there's steps and stages to it, right? So and that's part of like the autonomy that kids get as they're aging. And it's like that, when you have to pull back.
Mm-hmm.
That stage of growing up and maturation is a constant letting go on behalf of the parent. And it's a delicate line. Like, when do you let go? When it's too much? And I was laughing when you were talking. I was like, this is a bad joke and maybe it's too soon, but maybe this whole thing is to eradicate the generation of helicopter parents. Really self-sufficient now because they're being asked to, But I think there's steps and stages to it. So we used to all do our laundry all together, and we just came up with, because of this, we got the kids collapsible baskets for their room. They're in charge of collecting it. They have to bring it downstairs. We run the machines because of height issues, basically. and then they have to put them away. So there's ways to gradually that letting go. It's like that gradual release. That tight, loose, tight that you talk about in education. You model the skill, you let them loosely figure it out, and then you recap and summarize for it. But I think, like Alexander said too, even though many of us are educators, doing that with our own kids is very different than doing that for our classroom students. And I'm super meta as a teacher, and I'm always really aware and present. And there's something about my own personal children that triggers in me, get off of me, what do you mean you don't know mixed fractions? Which we've had to deal with as well. I had to relearn fractions. It was fun. So I think that for me is the learning is that I can be as communicative with my family as I can with my classroom. And try to meld those worlds a little bit better so that I'm wearing the hats simultaneously instead of putting on different hats as I walk in and out.
Well, I think there's some things that we just assume they know how to do. I realized with my son yesterday or today that he doesn't check his email, so his teacher has been emailing stuff, but that's not a thing that he ever had to do before. And now he knows to go on Google Classroom and look at his assignments, but then, she sends a thing that says, oh, we're going to have a Zoom meeting, and we don't see it until an hour after it happens. And so how do you teach them to start to be responsible for those things that we just take for granted? And you think that well, he's old enough to use a computer, he should know how email works. Or he was writing an email to one of his teachers the other day, and he didn't know you should write your name at the bottom of it, right? Well, they'll know it's from me because I'm like, oh my God, like as a teacher, it like drives me insane when you get the emails that are like text messages. And so we had to have a whole conversation about like how you set up the email, like, dear Mrs. Haddon, like, here's my question from Ben.
Oh, you have a Ben too? I have a Ben.
Yeah.
I do too.
And
How old is your Ben, Rachel?
11.
11. Okay.
Yeah, so he's in fifth grade and he's so self-efficient that like I have to remind myself sometimes that like I think that's something that I struggle with is like having to like check in and make sure that like things are happening in a way that like they should happen as a parent and what the teachers are expecting, but because he's so self-sufficient, like it's easy to say, oh, he's got it, right? And then like
And letting them fail the hard way, like
right.
Like
So important.
Failing, I think that's a really hard thing as a parent to let go and watch your kid fall in the face. And like the analogy is when they're toddlers and they're learning to walk and you back off a little bit so that they can fall and learn where their balance is. And I think there's a lot of research and work on that right now with like Peter Gray out of Boston College and the work on play and letting kids play and fail, because then when they're older, they're going to be able to navigate failure better. But it's super hard as a parent to watch your kid fall on their face. And the older they get, the bigger the risks are, failing first grade is very different than failing eighth grade,
Yeah.
Failing
Yeah.
eighth grade.
It can be done. It can be done. No, that's very true. And kids, they want to be independent and they want to do for themselves. So those of us with younger kids, especially if we're working with anxiety issues or something, to give them something that they can feel control over, that's also productive and helpful, and then they're contributing to the household and they're part of a team, could be really powerful, as well as giving them some practical life experiences. A lot of, I teach at a Montessori school, and Montessori starts with practical life lessons because that's the most appealing to children of all ages coming in. There's something very soothing about doing a practical life work. And so it's a good place to start before you move on to other things. And, helping dust around the house, picking things up, they can not only be helpful and help create order, which is peaceful for the parent trying to work and doesn't want to step on Legos because that hurts, but also gives something meaningful to do for your young child that really is learning, is a teaching tool as well. Like, I wouldn't feel bad if we didn't get all the worksheets done if I have a lower elementary student. If you don't get all your worksheets done, but you tell me that you helped take out the garbage or you've done these things, I think that's great, and it might even be better. I don't know. Those are just my 2 cents. But I also wanted to realize that we're at 8 o'clock, so I wanted to wrap it up a little bit. I have been checking the chat because I've been so focused on the faces. I don't know if people have added resources. Carrie, I see your hand.
I have the perfect segue because you were just talking about that autonomy. In our resources we compiled, there's a great op-ed from a woman in the New York Times who writes about cooking with her 4-year-old and the letting go of perfection that's necessary right now. And I think, Emily, you referred to that too when you said, like, as long as my kid isn't dumber than when they left school, we're in good shape. And I think that's a big work for our generation of mothers is not, like, because of the mommy wars and that whole thing of, like, letting go and realizing that a lack of perfection, they're going to be fine.
Yeah, we haven't even had time to talk about gender differences, because I will tell you my co-parents' idea of parenting in the pandemic is a lot different than mine, so had to deal with that a lot.
Yeah, and the strain on relationships of all kinds,
Huge, yeah.
Well, and your
I didn't put
husband's
that in, but I'll add that. I have
disposable.
a
The
great-
kids are not, like the husband's. I feel like I have to be a good mother to my kids. I don't have to be a good wife. That sounds awful. But that's my priority.
Well, and also sharing your workspace with your partner is really hard. You know, I saw a whole bunch of funny memes about parents who had to share workspace, and one of them was, or like Twitter tweets, and one of them was like, I didn't know I'm married to a let's circle back guy. You know, because they're in these like Zoom meetings with each other. And
I love it.
my husband and I joke all the time. We were both teachers. We're like, we could never work together. We couldn't work in the same school. It wouldn't work for us. And now here we are working. This is our office. We're both in here like, 6 hours a day.
So
Notice our husbands are not here with us. Although I will say that some of the names of people who signed up to say that they were interested were male names, and we did have, the one dad with us. And I did make sure that my husband put on a fresh T-shirt and made him promise to keep his phone nearby in case there seemed to be a lot of dads around, and I felt like I needed to have a rescue.
We did put some dad resources in as well.
We did, and we want to show dad. Yeah. So we have a resource list Emily, I'm not sure the best way to get it out. We might want to email it, or maybe we just put it on the web since there's lots of live links. But I'm also going to share my screen, which means I won't be seeing your pretty faces for a minute. But I want to share my screen. Carrie and I put together a little, if we feel like humor is so important, it is to us. We put together a little, it went away. Oh, here it is. A slideshow of some memes that are going around that we find to be humorous and worth our time. So I'll play that for you now.
This one is so true.
Oh my God, this is my life. And I am a teacher, and my daughter is in my class. So I never get away from her.
This was me last week. It's like,
Right.
I had trouble with first grade math today. No lie.
First grade
I believe it.
music. You have to
So they can get Common Core crop.
Oh my goodness.
and this is like the perfection thing, right? Run your pirate ship. Go for it.
Right. And then just some food for thought, which sometimes we don't want to hear, but actually maybe we can draw strength from. So anyways, that's what we came up with.
Who knows? Maybe in 100 years, this will serve as like a living history document of
Yeah.
what parenting was like during the COVID crisis.
I'm so sure of that. I've been documenting things. I think maybe I should have been a photojournalist in a previous life, because I photo document a lot of things. And my mother-in-law was like, at one point, our air conditioner broke. So we were like ET in our house. Like, remember when the federal government finds out that ET's there and they put up the plastic tunnels and all the hazmat stuff? That's what we did in our house. They had to get up to the third floor to put in the new air conditioning, so we plastic taped and we segregated ourselves from the workers in an airtight thing. It was so airtight that like you could see the plastic stretching. It was crazy. And I took pictures of that. And then when they were done, I put on, we have these N9, they're bigger than N95. They're like for like oils and gas. It's like a gas mask with plastic with two things there. I put that on and I went in to disinfect and clean the parts of the house that these strangers had been in, right? And I was like, you gotta take a picture of this because this is insanity. And someday they're gonna be like, remember when? You know, I remember going to visit my grandma and opening up the linen closet for a towel and a whole bunch of soap hitting me because during the Depression, soap was hard to get a hold of, so she hoarded all this soap. Soap, by the way, that we're still using. That's how much she hoarded it. And that's going to be, one of our kids' stories. Remember when? So anyways, thank you so much for coming. Emily, I don't know if you want to speak as to our list, the resource list, if you want to tell us how best to get that out with everybody. Should I put it up on the screen so you see what it sort of looks like? I don't know.
I
do you
think, you know, if you send it to me, I can email it out to the group.
Okay.
Does that
And
work?
I don't know how Jazz feels, but I think I have no sense of proprietorship over it. It's all things we found online, resources. There were a couple people who are fellow educators that I asked permission to share their material, but all of them were very, so I think that it's able to be shared. So once you have it, if you would like to share it out, please do.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, everyone. This
Yes,
was a breath of
thank
fresh
you,
air for
everyone.
me.
This was fun.
Oh, yay. Thank you. I'm so glad. It was fun to see you all, too.
It was so fun.
Take care then.
Thank
You
you.
guys, too.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.